right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to this session. My name is Haytham Eid, and I'm going to be chairing this session. It's very exciting to have two great speakers. We have Liana. She's going to start first with everyone's museum independent navigation for visually impaired visitors, and then Julia will follow after her, and she will be talking about Beam Me Up, testing robot tours in schools. So let's welcome our first speaker, Liana, and we can have some questions and answers after that. Thank you.
So good morning. First off, thank you guys for showing up so early. I know it's an early morning presentation. My name is Liana Yurka. I'm the head of accessibility and inclusion for the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences, which is in Raleigh, North Carolina. Today, I'm going to talk to you guys briefly about a project we launched earlier this year in February that provides a more independent navigation for opportunity for our visitors who have vision loss or blindness. So first, I'll start off with a little bit of background. The North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences is the state-owned science museum in the state of North Carolina. It's also the largest institution of its kind in the southeast United States. We have two buildings in the center of downtown Raleigh, which is our state capital. And we have a 46-acre eco-station also in Raleigh. We have a satellite facility in a small rural eastern county in North Carolina. And we also have a large research science lab in Raleigh. We have a staff of approximately 150 full-time employees, and we use about 750,000 volunteer hours in a given year. So we are what I consider a large science museum, but not the largest for sure. Because I work with visitors who are visually impaired, it is a habit of mine to describe everything that's on the screen. So here is a wonderful panoramic view of our two downtown Raleigh buildings. And in the center is our iconic 70-foot globe that also acts as a theater on the inside of the presentation space. It sits on the corner in between our two buildings, which are also connected by a two-story pedestrian bridge. So the museum has a really long history of providing inclusive practices. Since the year 2000, we have had a full-time permanent position dedicated to providing educational programming to underserved audiences and those needing special accommodations. We allow for them to best enjoy all the museum has to offer through this position. In 2015, the museum embraced inclusion as one of its founding principles, and so we created a unit dedicated entirely to accessibility and inclusion, which is rather unique amongst museums. Since 1960, the museum has been providing opportunities specifically for visitors with vision loss or blindness, and we're just about 2 miles east of the state's funded School for the Blind, which leads to us being a frequent destination for the students attending the school, as well as adults participating in their rehabilitation services. And this natural audience really provides the impetus for us to continue to remove barriers for that community and all of our visitors in general. So on the screen, this is a black and white image of some boys and girls from the School for the Blind. They all have some sort of visual impairment, and they were visiting the museum in 1968. In the foreground is a glass display cabinet with a pair of boys touching a specimen that they've placed on top of the cabinet, and behind them is the group of students who are also touching and holding specimens while their teacher oversees their visit. So one barrier that our visitors with vision loss and blindness face at our museum is that everything we do is highly visual. And I think this goes for most museums. We do offer a good bit of exhibit interactions that are auditory. So for instance, if you are walking through our museum, you might hear sounds of bird songs or a waterfall or maybe waves crashing if you're walking through our coastal hall. We also offer some tactile interpretations and interactive exhibits, but for the bulk of what we offer at our museum, our information is provided in a visual context. In 2014, we tried to help with that. We launched an app that was fully accessible using voiceover and descriptive text, and it allows visitors to gain information about the exhibits and the exhibit content. But we were still left with this void of how do we aid visually impaired visitors with navigation. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. This is an image of one of our diorama displays, and it has an interaction between two life-size dinosaurs. The room is a pretty round, dome-shaped room. It has large open ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows covering about 75% of the wall space. And on the left is a picture of our fossil skeleton, the Acrocanthosaurus, which is very T-Rex-like. His open mouth is leaning towards a replica of a living Pleurocoelus, which is a long-necked, long-tailed dinosaur. And the Pleurocoelus looks like it had a bite taken out of it. It's got an open wound in its rear leg. So as with many of your museums and our museums and modern museums in general, our designers work to make a really interactive and aesthetically pleasing space for our visitors. In this case, our museum's new building has very few straight lines and very few clean paths of travel. Our newest wing, it is not possible to walk all the way across in one straight line and make it all the way across the building without running into an exhibit. It's very beautiful, yes. It's also really challenging to navigate. So what became most important to us during our project was to create an equitable way for our visitors with vision loss to navigate across the museum. And we wanted what might be obvious to our sighted visitors and you and me to be available to our visitors without vision. So this is a wide-angle shot of some of our exhibits located inside of our new wing of the museum. In the forefront is the beginning of a bright and colorful, larger-than-life double helix representation of DNA, with red, pink, and blue lights illuminating the inside of the helix, acting like nucleotides. And below the DNA model are several exhibits for visitors to explore. I can't tell you the topics of them, generally around DNA. The exhibits are designed with rounded sides and inconsistent in size and shape and are placed kind of incongruously across the floor. So to try to remove that navigational barrier for our visitors with vision loss when navigating our building, we chose to implement Bluetooth iBeacons across the newer building. So beacons work kind of like a tiny digital lighthouse. Each lighthouse, real lighthouse, has a unique light pattern, and it lets nearby ships know where they are. Similarly, our beacons emit a unique signal, but theirs is digital, and instead of a ship or a boat that sees the signal, a Bluetooth-enabled device like your phone will see the signal or receive the signal. The beacons are generally passively sending signals out all the time, and usually your phone ignores that signal unless you have your Bluetooth enabled and you are running an app that can interpret the signal being sent to it. We work in partnership with BlindSquare, which is a third-party app. It is the #1 navigation app for people with vision loss or blindness. And outside where there's GPS, BlindSquare provides real-time information about where an individual is, let's say the corner of Canal Street and Decatur Street. But once inside, BlindSquare and all navigational apps lose power because GPS doesn't penetrate our buildings. So by incorporating the Bluetooth beacons, we can replace the GPS while indoors and provide similar content or information to users without them having to change apps. This is a seamless, weightless transition for our visitors who might already be using BlindSquare to get to our facility. Here we have a couple images. The first is of my hand holding a beacon that's manufactured by Contactio. The beacon is a small white rhomboid object about the size of a Post-it note and a little thicker than your iPhone. The beacon is a square shape with rounded edges and a base that is larger than the top and has gentle sloping edges. And on the top of all of our beacons is a small silver foil logo from the manufacturer. The other image is just the beacon placed next to one of my standard red pens, just for scale. Our beacons cost about $12 a piece. We bought 200 at a time, And it has a battery life that can last as long as 2 years if you set the settings appropriately. We learned our lesson the hard way in June. So the most important part for this project for us was providing important navigational information for our visitors who couldn't see. So the top priorities really included locations for the reception desk, the elevators, the stairs, emergency exits, and restrooms. I mean, those are the places you want to know where they are if in case of an emergency or just generally visiting a museum. From there, we wanted to add information about navigating our exhibit floors. And to do this, we created a framework of almost 30 of these beacons in our newest building, which is about 80,000 square feet of exhibit space. So each individual beacon was programmed with information that we determined we wanted our visitors to know and what we wanted to provide. Literally every word that the beacon informs the visitor about, we determine and we input into that beacon. Each beacon is first provided with a name, which is just a phrase or information provided to the visitor when they step into the cloud or the range of that beacon. From there, we provided information for each beacon based on what is located based in cardinal direction in relation to that beacon. So for instance, when you stand at the beacon near our front door, it will announce that it's the main entrance. And while you're still standing at that beacon, if you face east, you'll get information about what is due east of you, starting with what you might pass first, and then ending with what is furthest away from you in that direction. If you change directions and face north or south, the information is unique to those cardinal directions. So each beacon, therefore, has up to 5 bits of information or layers of information unique to it, including its unique name and the 4 cardinal directions. Not all of our beacons have 5 layers because some we placed adjacent to a wall or an exit, and there's no reason for them to go in that direction. This network of beacons has allowed our visitors to navigate at a leisurely pace across our exhibit floors with information about what's in close proximity. It is not super fast real time. Our computerized phones haven't gotten quite there yet. It still takes time for them to get the information. In the foreground of this picture is a young man navigating our museum with a white cane and a phone in one hand and the other. And behind him is a woman who's guiding a gentleman who's also visually impaired around that exhibit. So in the background are some of our other wonderful exhibits as well. So we use a Google Sheet to update all of the content that is in our beacons. It can be a little bit overwhelming because that Google Sheet provides information for all of the beacons we have at our disposal, and that's all 200 that we purchased, even if we're only using 30 at a time. The information has all this unique information that's unique to each beacon, a lot of which I never need to know. I just know the number and the ID and what I tell it. So this is a screenshot of the Google Sheet that we use for updating the beacon content. And here is another screenshot where you can see where we change and update the message each beacon provides. So one of them says patio entrance to the Daily Planet Cafe, which is our cafe there. And that is literally what it says to you when you walk up to it. By far, the feedback has been really, really positive. Visitors who are using the app are excited to have something like this. It's really cool and innovative for them. Professionals, orientation and mobility specialists, rehabilitation specialists, teachers of the visually impaired, and community leaders are all really excited to have this project and be able to use this technology in a public venue. And others are also looking to replicate it. So hopefully soon the city of Charlotte in North Carolina wants to take this project and replicate it. And we just spoke with the town of Wellington in New Zealand, and they're doing something very similar with beacons in their town. So here's a picture of a woman navigating in front of some museum exhibits with her service dog in her left hand and the phone in her right hand. And in the background are a lot of multicolored exhibits that are brightly lit. The biggest feedback we've gotten from our users, especially those who are visually impaired, is thank you. This hasn't been done before for them in a museum. And the other one is like, can you do this in my grocery store? I would love to know where the cereal I want is. So thank you for coming so early and for your attention. Here's my contact information in case any of you wants to reach out to me. I welcome talking to you guys about this project. I would love to see it in all the museums around the country and beyond.
Thank you so much, Liana. I have seen that so many uses of beacons, but this is a very innovative way of using it. And it's really inexpensive technology, so it's a great idea. We may take a question or two until the next presenter get ready. Do you guys have a question? Sure.
What are the issues that, or have you had any issues with the beacons themselves or the software? Is it working pretty reliably? Is the accuracy pretty good?
Yep. So like anything that's Bluetooth and radio frequency, when we were setting it up, we were testing it during the holiday time, which is really popular. So we had to go in and tweak them to make sure that the signal was accurate when the building was also quiet. So it's a modification, but we haven't had any problems since we've gone in and done that. The only issue we had at one point was like all the batteries died at one time, and we just had to go in and replace them, which isn't, when we have 30 out, it's not a big deal.
How many do you have total?
We have about 30 in one building. We have 200 at our disposal to use for the other facilities. We have 5 facilities, so we have it. We're working on the second one.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Where do you physically locate the beacons?
Out of children's reach. So generally high up in the ceiling or hidden inside of a display if we can.
Do you have, is it all on one floor?
No.
For the museum? Do your beacons overlap in a 360 space?
They can and they do, so we have to tweak the signal while we're setting them up.